Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, this is National Tesla and the Gong. I have a very unique Australian company here with me, and we're going to have a conversation with the team of this company, and we're going to find out what they're going to do. And I'm prefacing this by saying they're so unique because, one, they're Aussie, go Aussie. The second thing is they are into autonomous technologies, and we're going to talk to them and find out what this is all about. This is the team of Atum, and we're going to talk to first the managing director, Andrew Wilson. We're going to find out what this is all about, and then we'll go down the aisle and we'll introduce the rest of the members of the team who have joined us. Go for it, mate. Andrew Wilson, introduce yourself and tell us all about Atum as well.
Yeah, so my name's Andrew Wilson. I'm the managing director of Atum. And we've got our team, Robert O'Donnell, Jade Voyevich, and Dr. Imad Khan right here with us today. A bit about me. So ever since I was a young kid, I was interested in everything AI, robots, and military vehicles and commercial vehicles. My imagination was I would have a space company that provide all the technology for Mars and stuff like that in terms of tractors and all that type of stuff. And I would design aircraft and stuff like that, new inventions I used to call them when I was 10. And I sent them to the Royal Australian Air Force. And I was absolutely ecstatic when they replied to me and I've got a reply in when I was 12. And unfortunately, with the conditioning of my grandparents, I decided to become a police officer initially. And I joined the Army Reserves as an infantry rifleman. And I've been doing that continuously for 11 years. I also volunteered for St John Ambulance and SES. And I'm like, no, I want to get back to my dream. I did about four degrees, and then I'm doing on my 5th in physics. Wow. And one of the big focus is quantum physics and electrodynamics. I want to follow my dream. So I got into intelligence, diagonally, then into data and heavily into data, understanding and pulling all those concepts at the ground level. And that's where the first principles thinking comes in. So we break down what are the core components, and me being involved in electric vehicles and since they were the first mass-produced electric vehicle came to Australia, the Mitsubishi i-MiEV. It's been a big interest of mine, and I try to live my life with a low carbon impact. There's no compromises, and anyone can do it. I think we can all do it. But further to that, our mission as Atum is to rapidly advance defence and commercial industry into autonomy and sustainability. Autonomy and the autonomy component, that means replacing humans in data.
So what is this name, Atum? It sounds very interesting, very intriguing. So how does this name come up? What is the basis behind the name? And that is one. And the follow-up question to that is, what is the core mission of the company?
With Atum, the name behind it. So Advent is a Latin word for the coming of, or going to, but usually it means the coming of. And Atum is the Egyptian word for sun god, or Ra. Later became Ra. Oh. So he was known as the first Egyptian god for Heliopolis. So expanding on that, he also therefore he's the son of God, the creator. He's also the king of the gods. So put that together means the coming of the king of the gods, or coming of the king.
Wow, that's a great name.
Yeah. So further expanding on that, our mission is to rapidly advance defence and commercial industry into autonomy and sustainability. And what do we mean by autonomy? So we want to take people out of dangerous jobs that put a lot of people at risk, and also set ourselves up for success of the pending population collapse, which is inevitable. Increasing education of the population, birth rates go down. So therefore, we need to sustain our efforts in our industry. We need higher levels of automation, especially with an aging population. But the sustainability part is electrification as fast as possible with bespoke machinery and equipment, especially with defence vehicles and stuff. Statista and Forbes reported on this. The US military produced 59 million tonnes in 2019 of carbon dioxide emissions.
Okay.
That's more than Morocco, which was 55 million tonnes. So they pollute more than a small country. So it is, and as well as industry. Industry is a heavy polluter as well. So they need to reduce their emissions. But it's not just about emissions, it's also about efficiency.
That's absolutely brilliant. So not just a cool name, it's got a cool mission. I read in one of the blogs that it is the only Aboriginal owned autonomous technology company right now in Australia. Is that how it is?
Yes. So I am Aboriginal myself. Like I said, I'm a Gundungurra man. My family originate from Goulburn Dalton area. They were farmers and they intermingled with the white population. And that's our original lineage. So our family origin can be traced back to Blackney Creek Reserve.
Right.
And so my grandmother, my great-grandfather, my great-great-grandfather, all Aboriginal lineage. So that's where I get my mob and my dad. So that's our mob. But it's funny, I'm a local member for the Gundungurra Local Aboriginal Land Council, but they're not actually on Gundungurra land, they're on Gabbargal land.
Okay.
So but they've got the name because when they drew it up and it was a white fella that named it, he mixed up the borders. So quite interesting.
Fair enough. Okay, let's talk to the rest of the team now. Let's talk to Robert O'Donnell. Mate, introduce yourself and tell us more about yourself.
Thanks, Nash. I certainly don't think my background's as interesting as Andrew's is. I'm a career Army officer. I've been an artillery officer for the last 15 years, and I was an infantry soldier prior to that. I've just wrapped that career up, just transferred to the reserves, and I've now started as a defence consultant. Aside from that, I've got a few other organisations I'm involved with, a director for the Royal United Services Institute for Defence and Security Studies Australia.
Okay.
I also have my own little business on the side as well.
Oh, that's brilliant, mate. That's brilliant. Well, let's talk to Jade first, but we'll come back to Dr. Imad in just a bit. Jade, so go ahead, mate. Introduce yourself and tell us what you do.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Nash. So my role at Advent Atum is the head of finance. And so I will be putting together all the financial documents, purchasing, acquisitions, tendering, processing, anything finance related. So my background, I'm a CPA. I've also recently completed a postgrad in data analytics. And in my spare time, I'm also a volunteer firefighter for my local fire brigade.
Wow. Awesome. That's awesome, mate. Awesome. And last but not the least, Dr. Imad, I have loads and loads of questions for you, mate, but please go ahead and introduce yourself first.
Thank you very much, Nash. I have a deep interest in autonomous vehicles since high school. And when I was in my undergraduate degree first year, 1997, I wrote to BMW with the idea that we should use computer vision to build autonomous vehicles. And they responded back, like the Royal Australian Air Force responded back to Andrew. Okay. And that helped in my mind to cement and get more encouragement. Nice. So fast forward to 1999 and 2000, I did a thesis on autonomous vehicles, and people from Carnegie Mellon University's Robotics Institute, the Robotics Institute of Carnegie Mellon University, they helped me while I was studying in a third world country to develop my ideas and do my thesis. So there is a textbook, whenever the history is written about autonomous vehicles, the first thing to mention is Elvin, which is Autonomous Land Vehicle in a Neural Network, developed by Dean Pomerleau. Mm-hmm. So I was able to work with Dean Pomerleau, and they would respond to my emails and give me ideas and point me toward literature to become an expert. And similarly, his boss, Chuck Thorpe, who was the director of Robotics Institute at Carnegie Mellon, would do the same. And I'm still in touch with these people. So it has been more than 20 years. So that's great. And then when I applied for my PhD in 3 different countries, US, Japan, and Australia, and I got admitted everywhere. But September the 11th happened. So I thought that I might be discriminated because I do look like this. Since for a very long time. So I didn't go to US. And I came, the professor in Japan retired. He said that your scholarship is secured, but you need to find another supervisor. So I came to Australia, to a small university, relatively compared to US and Japan. They were great universities. In Australia, it was Deakin University. But I was making my decision on the basis of the reputation of the supervisors, not just the reputation of the university. Absolutely. So the reputation of the supervisors were equally good in all 3 countries. So as a result, I came here and completed my PhD in neural networks. And so this is the short history. And since 2006-7, I've been working in the Australian industry in the energy sector and have done 2 Australia First projects. One of them I will mention, very interesting, which was to catch people who were stealing electricity by using smart meter data alone.
Wow.
And we found out that some 36,000 people were stealing electricity and 20,000 people were growing pots by stealing electricity. I can look at a graph and tell you who is growing pots.
Oh, that's awesome. That's just brilliant. Oh, okay. That's okay. You made my day already. That's
and
pretty
I
awesome.
want to say something more about the name of the Advent Atom. When
Yes, please.
Andrew approached me for this very interesting prospect, and he presented the name Advent Atom, the first thought which came to my mind before Andrew told us about the coming of the king is that advent of modern physics. So whenever the history of the modern physics is written, this word advent is used from the classical physics into the advent of modern physics. So modern physics is essentially a large part of the modern physics is atomic particles. So I thought that Advent Atom is, I made that link in my mind.
Oh, that's awesome. I mean, this is a Tesla channel that I run, and I'm a massive Elon and Tesla fanboy here. And Elon always says in most of his tweets, he says, physics is the law, everything else is a recommendation. So yeah, absolutely.
Correct. You know what? I was thinking the other day that the legal constructs that we have are just supposed in the mind. Yeah. Actual laws are the laws of physics, which governs the physical reality.
No, we'll talk about that in just a bit. We'll talk about the first principles as well, and how your entire company is grown ground up from the laws of first principles. We'll talk about in just a bit. And just as a reminder for everybody who's watching, there will be chapters in the description. All you have to do is go and choose the chapters that you want to watch, and then come back and watch the rest if you want to. If you guys want to highlight any of the other non-executive members or non-executive directors, by all means, Andrew, go for it, mate.
One of our directors, who's been a non-executive director, has been a massive supporter, is Mark Tipping. So Mark Tipping is the current CEO of Edison's Projects Australia and Edison Projects Defence. Mm-hmm. So he's building batteries and using that for defence applications and also remote and community applications. So he's been a big encouragement ever since and really, really pushing us, which is great. So we've got a great non-executive director. The other person we have is Vasco Bozanovsky. He also acts as our IT infrastructure man. He's a network engineer by trade, and he's also a mathematician. So he helps us push us in the right direction with our IT infrastructure. He works for Woolworths Group. It's a massive company, and he manages the deployments across all of Woolworths Group, from hardware to software to robotics deployments, all that type of stuff. So in massive distribution centers and all that. So we've got 2 high caliber people. We also like to mention our board advisors do have Dr. Rebecca Lesic, a background in policing and intelligence and policy and public health. So it gives us that lens as well. And she's also a chemistry scientist and a university tutor. So she's got a heavyweight background. We also got Robert Brand. So Robert Brand has been involved in the space industry for quite a long time. He's used to work with NASA on the Apollo 11 project. We're down at Parkes in the telecommunications side of things, helping get the man on the moon. And then he's also worked in the telecommunications industry for a very long time. And he also runs his own space startup company. Awesome. So he gets a lot of defense contracts launching balloons through his space company with the Air Force for meteorological data or anything else.
Oh, that's brilliant. Mate, let's move on to the more technical side of things and talk more on that. Let's start with the first product that is your flagship product, which is Horus. I'll start with Andrew first, and then we'll go down the more technical part after that. I read on the website, it says that this is a product which is plug and play. Can you just explain to us more about what Horus actually stands for, and what exactly is plug and play, and how this is the driving product of your company?
Yeah, again, with keeping with the theme of the company's name, Horus is an Egyptian god after all. So may be mistaken for understood as the all-seeing eye. So it means high order reinforced autonomous system. So reinforced or transfer or convolutional, it's learnings, learns as you go, and it improves while it's learning. So that's hence the all-seeing eye, if that makes sense.
Oh, yes, yeah.
So further expanding on that, it's designed to be an all-in-one package. So it's both a hardware and a software solutions. And that's where the plug and play comes in mind. The idea is over its feature improvements, it's able to support more and more sensor inputs from other third-party providers. So instead, the problem Defence and Commercial have, they have many systems, but they don't all talk to each other. And integrating that and having pretty much the Power BI, essentially, of an autonomous system is going to be a massive win-win-win scenario for our partners. So that's the idea. And but the core components of the product is initially computer vision and also audio. So we're trying to get almost at least 3 out of the 5 sensors. So it can hear you, it can see you, and it can understand you. That's the main thing.
So how I understand it, this Horus sits on top of existing systems and then integrates into the existing systems, and it is the sight, the auditory input, and the understanding, and then it gives the commands to the existing systems, and that's how it works.
Yeah. To further explain, so think of it as the brain. Okay, so the brain, and it's got a bit of the heart, which is a power pack, and it provides the energy. Because the problem is, say if you were to put it in a legacy vehicle, such as an Abrams tank or whatever, just making stuff up here, it needs its own independent energy source. Say if the diesel engine fails, you still, and an auxiliary power unit essentially. And it can run 24/7, provided it's recharged by the diesel engine or anything like that. And that provides its own independent source. So you can keep it on 24/7 with low or no emissions. So it's always working independently. So, when you go to sleep, say the vehicle goes to sleep, turn the engine off, its brain's still working, you know what I mean? So that's the idea around it, and significantly reduce costs in this integrated system.
Now, you talked about the brain, and now the crux of this whole conversation comes up, and I want to involve Dr. Imad here, and I want to ask him more about what exactly is the brain first, the brain of the Advent Atum Horus system, that is. Before that, I wanted to also explain to our viewers and listeners what is neural network and what it does and how it works in understanding the environment, and also give us an overview of what it does for the Horus system as well, please.
So since the majority of our decision making is very likely to involve a neural network, the brain of Horus is going to be a neural network in all likelihood. So I use the word likelihood because there are many other machine learning methods which could have been deployed and has been deployed in the past. At the moment, the neural networks are at the epitome of machine learning. So the deep learning is a multiple combination of layers of a neural network and nothing more than that. So now let's come back to your more basic question of the neural network. So the idea of the neural network was presented by Marvin Minsky in 1940s. And he said that the brain has neurons and they are interconnected to perform operations. So he said that let's create one neuron, and he called it perceptron. So as a perception. So he developed that neuron on the basis of the brain. So in the brain, the neuron has gray matter, and the gray matter is connected to other neurons through connections. So he used a simpler mathematical function at that time as to represent the gray matter, and connections were represented as a number. The greater the number, the greater the strength of the connection from the one to the other neuron could be. So as the time flies, more computing power became available, and the mathematics of neural networks become more advanced. They have started to use more complex functions. And today, the basic type of neural networks uses hyperbolic tangent or sigmoid functions, which are complex mathematical functions. And the idea of those functions is that they can model the functions which are simpler than them.
Okay.
And when you combine more of them in a neural network, like more neurons, you add more neurons, which means you add more complex functions, then they can model the functions which are at or below the complexity of those combinations of those functions.
Right.
And there's a mathematical proof by Stritcomb. The name of the author is Stritcomb. In the literature, it proves that a single hidden layer neural network, which means a neural network which has a perception part, like for example, my eyes, that's the perception of the neural network.
Mm-hmm.
And then the brain, gray matter and connections, does an operation, and then actuators. So I want to lift a glass, I look at it and process that this is a glass, and then my actuators, the output is to pick up the glass and drink the water.
Yeah.
So the first layer of the neural network is the perception, eyes, processing, brain, and hand is the actuator. So these are the three layers of a neural network.
Okay.
The middle layer, hidden layer, is the processor.
Okay.
Is the main part of the neural network. So this proof suggests that any task can be done. Basically, that's what it means, that any task can be done if you have an unlimited number of neurons in the hidden layer of the neural network. Right. That is just with a single layer. With the now let's come to the deep neural network. A deep neural network has multiple hidden layers, not just one. So you can imagine how powerful that thing can be.
Absolutely.
The issue is that when you add layers of hidden material or hidden layer or the gray neurons or complex mathematical functions, then what happens is it is hard to explain how the neural network is coming to the decision that it is coming at. For example, if I ask you, Nosh, that please tell me what happened in your brain when you pick up the glass. When you look at the glass, how did your brain recognize it that it's a glass? You can't explain.
No.
It just happens. So it's like it becomes a complex black box.
Yes.
Hard to explain. It is making the decision, but very hard to explain.
Okay.
So as a result, most of the neural solutions, it is very hard to predict when they can fail. B, it is very hard to tell the regulators and the governments and the legislators how the neural network is coming to a decision. So for example, the technology exists for an autonomous vehicle, for the steering direction at least, to be automated since 1995. That was ELVN, Autonomous Land Vehicle and Neural Network, and further development of its MANIAC, which was multiple element networks in autonomous control. I'll come to that later.
Okay.
So those technologies existed in 1995, but they have never been allowed to drive on the road until now because the legislators do not trust it. Still, it is very hard to explain how that process is happening. There's a push toward explainable AI in the last 5-6 years, and the regulators are demanding more and more answers. But thank God they are also accepting it. So it's interesting that, look, I mean, you cannot you allow a human to drive. Human cannot explain how it's coming to a decision.
Yeah.
And B, the neural network at the moment is making less mistakes in terms of millions of kilometers per accident.
That's true.
Than humans.
Yes.
But still, the human legislators are hesitant a little bit and are like not able to trust it yet, which is to some extent fear of the unknown, and to some extent not the enough development of the science to be able to explain the black box.
Rightio. Now we'll come back to this AI part in just a bit, Doc. I mean, I have lots and lots of questions on the AI side of things. Just want to bring in Rob here, and I want to ask him with regards to robotics and AI, and what is Advent Atum's roadmap in that regard at this time?
So before we talk about the company's roadmap, I think it's important to situate ourselves in the environment we find ourselves in, and I see 4 major areas or factors that define that environment. So essentially, without wanting to sound dramatic, we are in an era, or we're approaching an era of unprecedented change. Climate change is the obvious one. We're seeing the effects daily, and we know the dangers that that's going to lead us to. Population demographic shifts. So we're seeing increasing urbanization, moves of people away from rural food growing areas into urban areas, developing that knowledge-based economy at the expense of resource and food production. And we're also seeing an aging population. We are going to see soon, the disappearance of, say, the baby boomers and other former generations. And we are going to see increased pressures on the welfare system. The third major area is geopolitics. There are some significant political shifts that are occurring in the world at the moment, not just wars and not just state-on-state expansion, but we are seeing, for example, a brain drain, particularly out of Australia for a long time. A lot of our best and brightest have simply moved to other countries because we haven't had the industry there to make it worth their while and to support and develop them here. That also has implications for supply chain surety. And certainly over the last year or so, one of our Australian senators, Senator Molan, for example, has spoken about our national fuel security. It's something like 30 days of reserves. And when you look at that, not just from the fact that the military needs it, but also people need it for their day-to-day lives, it leaves us in a very tenuous place. We're a big island continent. We need to ship all these things in. Those supply lines are getting
depleted,
less and less reliable.
Yeah.
And that's led to the government's focus on the development of Australian industry capability and developing sovereign skills and sovereign capabilities to provide us not just industry growth, but also some real-time stability and security. And the fourth aspect that I sort of see that defines this era is our knowledge or awareness. So it was only a couple of hundred years ago that we had maps that had gaps on them. Entire coastlines would be missing from countries and things like that. And in a very short period of time, not only have we essentially completely mapped the Earth's surface and the surface of other planets and other bodies like the moon, but we've actually got real-time, persistent, prolific sensors that can observe almost anything that occurs, almost anywhere on the planet. There are still some gaps. We know underwater, for example, we haven't completely mapped, say, the depths of the Mariana Trench and things like that. But as far as knowledge and awareness of our world goes, it's pretty complete.
True.
So bringing that down a level, Advent Atom doesn't just want to focus on products. We see a real need for AI and electrification to fit into that broader strategic narrative. And so we want to provide capabilities. We don't just want to sell products.
Absolutely.
Now, I'm a defense guy. Defense has a very mature framework that they use when they look at capability, and they call it fundamental inputs to capability. And there are 9 of them: command and management, organization, major systems, personnel, supplies support, facility training areas, and the last one, industry. It's recognized that industry is critical to capability, and subsequently we see ourselves as being critical to a new growing capability.
Right.
So to answer your question more specifically, what's our roadmap? So we have internally developed a roadmap based on 3 functional industry areas we would like to get involved in. Defense is the primary and obvious one, but we do want to expand into agriculture and construction sectors, and potentially other sectors as well. Mining, potentially, ports or airports, logistics. There is potential for Horus and electric vehicles across all of those industry segments. Our roadmap has been focused on defense initially, and we've got essentially 3.5 stages. Stage 1 is the Horus platform, and stage 1.5 is a transitory stage, if you would be the Horus placed on a small unmanned ground vehicle. Almost like a proof of concept, but also a minimum viable product. Stage 2 sees us working more towards the electric propulsion piece. So we do have a plan to purchase an armored vehicle, gut it, and put in modern electric power plants to prove that not only is that capability viable, but that it comes with a whole bunch of advantages to the military or other big users of large vehicles, that they can achieve great economies of scale, cost savings, as well as environmental protection, etc., with electrification. And then the third step would be the Apophis armored fighting vehicle, which is a concept, but where we see ourselves partnering with industry to create a modern, fit-for-purpose armored vehicle that we can then offer to our defence force or to aligned defence forces?
So how I see this is, I mean, even before we go down the path of talking about Apophis, how I see this is first and foremost, defense is one of the biggest, carbon producing industries right now, and you guys want to tackle that at the very top and knock that off from the very top, which is a very commendable thing. And obviously, defense does have a big budget as well, and so it does help in bringing some money in too. But beyond that, I think that you showing a proof of concept saying that you don't have to rely on these large diesel vehicles to achieve the goal is a huge step forward. And I don't want to go into and people who watch my videos know that I definitely don't go down the political path ever. That's not how I work, but these are the top level things which are very commendable, and I like that. And more importantly, I from the conversation that we had thus far, I understand that it's all plug and play. You don't have to, you can't change anything in it. I mean, Rome was not built in a day, so you can't change everything in one sweeping fashion. But then step by step, you can integrate and go lower and lower and lower, and that in itself is a huge thing. And I really like that particular model where it's all plug and play, and that also gives you guys the immense power of upgradability, isn't it?
Yes,
that's awesome. Dr. Imad, I have an interesting question. This is not completely to do with Advent Atum, but because we touched upon machine learning and artificial intelligence. This is something that everybody is scared about. Artificial intelligence ruling the world. So how do you address this when people come and ask you, are we going to give our fighter jets and missiles to an AI which can destroy the planet? I mean, to put a more finer point there, people have watched Hollywood movies ad nauseum, and it's sort of ingrained in their brain that the next Terminator will be the one which destroys the world. So how do you address that, and how do you talk to people who raise that question?
It's very interesting that whenever I meet new people, after some introduction, as soon as the question is being asked that what do you do for work, and I tell about that I work in artificial intelligence, the next question used to be, in fact, to a large extent still is the AI going to take over the world? And when I say that no, it is very unlikely, the people would try to argue that no, it is actually very likely. The people who have no expertise in artificial intelligence, common people, they would argue that no, that is not the case, and you are not, you could be wrong. But then I present more scientific evidence as to why it cannot happen. Then some people will listen, but some people will start referencing Hollywood.
They have been drip fed. They have been drip fed Terminator movies all down. There are like 5 parts already, so they've been drip fed that through the ages, and that's probably the reason why, isn't it?
Yes, but what is more interesting for me is that in the last 2 years, when I say that no, it's not, the people do not resist as much as they used to, which is very interesting, which means that the intellectual levels of the common man is possibly increasing.
It's a paradigm shift.
So that, yes, that is very interesting. I'd never expected that shift, because people have a sort of romanticism with artificial intelligence and take over. It's a sort of like pervert romanticism.
Yeah,
I would say, and I thought that such romanticism generally do not go away easily. But I'm surprised that in the last year or 2, I don't face as much resistance when I answer that question.
So the first question, for sorry to intervene there, I just wanted to ask you, one is, what is the evidence that you provide to make them either change their mind, or if you do not provide any evidence yourself, what has happened in people's minds that they have shifted their way of thinking about AI?
I don't really know what has shifted. I'm still surprised that why I don't face the same resistance and why I don't face the same romanticism from the people about AI.
Okay.
So it is on average. Obviously, you still find people who would argue that no, still have that romanticism, but it is not as much anymore.
That's brilliant. And so, what is the evidence to show people, to say that it is the chance of AI taking over and ruling us is going to be much lesser. I mean, we are not going to have robo overlords in the future, are we?
No. So the reason I say is some of the mathematical proofs, which essentially say. So let me define quickly what is a finite state machine. So a finite state machine is a mathematical statistical machine which changes its states to come to a result. Like you give it an input, do 2 + 2, it will go through some operation, convert it to binary, and then it will jump states and then say it is 4 in the end. That is a very simple explanation of a finite state machine. And all our computers today are finite state machines. So there is a mathematical proof which says that a universal finite state machine does not exist, which essentially means that a machine which can perform all operations does not exist. You need to write specialized software to do operations, narrow operations, even if it's AI operations. You need to software to actually conduct those particular operations. So an AI which will drive car will only drive cars. An AI which would do a certain thing will only do that certain thing. So as a result, I don't believe, and without going in the definition, philosophical issues of what consciousness is, I believe that digital computers and AI based on digital computers cannot achieve consciousness. Issues about drone strikes killing wrong people. But it was still operating in its parameters. So it's very unfortunate that it is very hard to sometimes discern between competence and non-competence, but it would just perform that job. It would not go ahead and kill a US soldier, for example, or make a decision that it's unethical, blah, 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 and kill somebody else. That's not going to happen because it is narrowly designed for that purpose. And there was mathematical proofs which say that it's very hard or impossible, actually, in my opinion, as long as there's mathematics back behind it, unless those mathematical proofs that I'm relying on are disproven in mathematics, not in practice, because it cannot be disproven in practice until it is disproven, because those are deductive science. They're not inductive science. So unless they are disproven by someone else, then I will start changing my opinion that probably AI can one day take over. What is more dangerous, Nosh, is that a human who controls AI orders it to go ahead and destroy the planet. Then
I was
AI
just going to ask you that question.
Doing that.
No, I was just going to ask you that question. So are there safeguards in the algorithm that can be inbuilt so that the programmer does not defeat the program? Yes, Andrew.
I'll jump into that.
Please.
So if you have rogue actors that want to develop a malicious AI to do a specific task that's controlled by human beings, that's where the risk is. And Imad would agree with me on this aspect. I don't know if anyone's heard the paperclip maximizer. Robots are designed to be very narrowly efficient, for example. And quantum computing and all that is another jazz, and probably biocomputers that could achieve phenomenal. There's a thing with consciousness. I won't go into further, but there's levels of consciousness. What we talk about is human style consciousness, like what we call phenomenological consciousness, and that's what Imad will probably refer to, and a lot of people averagely refer to. But like, there's a dog with a level of consciousness and stuff like that. It's like, what type of, like a lobster? It's not really conscious, but it is somewhat sentient. If that makes sense. Okay, so that's where we talk about consciousness. I'm a bit more of the subject matter expert on consciousness and that aspect. But going back to that, a narrow intelligence controlled by an authority is risky. And our job as Advent Atom is, we don't believe in a narrow super Skynet or anything like that. We believe in human machine teaming. Your robot is meant to be your companion in some aspects, not just a tool. So you need to work as a part of your team member. That's where, and it also gives that benefit of doubt, But the thing is, that's the reason for it. And robots need to learn from humans, and that's a main thing. That transfer learning process, that the way they learn. So that, and some of our vehicles are going to be decentralized to many points. So they're not going to be fully connected and controlled by one complete system. They'll give instructions, they'll interpret those instructions, then they'll make that decision based on the instructions, based on their programming. So so that makes sense. But in Australia, we have good news. We looking at regulations and rules around it, but we don't want to restrict ourselves because other actors with too much, if they develop an AI system and we don't play catch up, they pretty much rule the world essentially. So this is more a philosophical discussion, but AI is also in many aspects when we get some equilibrium. That this is what OpenAI was about, is sort of democratization of artificial intelligence, even if we achieve super intelligence or some form of AGI, wherever it's through quantum computing or something. That's a bit of a pipe dream at the moment, but yeah, but going on to that, when you democratize it, it's sort of good in a way, because it takes the human element out of the front lines so much. And it's actually, have you noticed the pattern of conflict? Humans have been less involved and less casualties. And with AI, it sort of makes it a zero-sum game, because they're like, oh, we just throw equipment together and we both just run out of money. What's the point? So you're less likely to go to conflict, like mutually assured destruction. But the problem with mutually assured destruction with nuclear weapons, it could wipe out humanity, and we don't want that.
Absolutely.
So you need to stop. The problem is, when you don't have that, though, then you have massive wars between powers, because there's less risk involved going to war in terms of wiping out the entire planet, essentially, or your population.
I just wanted to just say you made me feel sad. I was hoping that there'll be a day when somebody just takes a knife and then opens and then takes the glove off and say, listen to me. that'll be a lot of fun, but we don't want that situation, do we? I mean, or something like, come with me if you want to live, something like that. I mean, I'll be back or something like that.
There's lack of regulation in the globe and third-party actors.
Fair enough. Right, Imad. Now I have a question. How do you get the data to train your models? Do you have anything running in shadow mode right now? And the other question, which is a closely related question, is what about data security and data privacy?
I can expand on that. So, and Imad would go. So we're in our product development stage, in our prototyping stage. So we'll make sure once it's ready and it's patented and stuff like that, then we'll release it to a press release, but it is in development, but we acting on it as a priority. And the core focus is getting visual data. So there's two aspects of it. So data collection for navigation and movement in its surroundings. And the other one is natural form of communication. So field hand signals, speech, stuff like that. So those data collection will never stop. So it'll go through, it'll be like what they call a business as usual activity. So it'll go all the way through the project, but we need a ground level of data collection. But it's good you think about with robots, the problem aspect now is robots tend to not naturally communicate in current situations naturally. So speaking to the robot, hand signals, stuff like that. So it usually commands are sent through a little Android device. We want to get away with that, because what if the Android device fails? Again, you have a stranded asset in the field. So you want to have multiple different forms of communicating to that robot to get your instructions. Because out in the field, where you're in mining or you're in agriculture, where you've got black spots, or you've got in defense, communication breaks down. And Rob will and definitely has experienced that, and I've experienced that being a soldier myself.
So if one system fails, there's always a backup, and there's a backup to the backup, so that there are multiple levels of communication, and the chance of failure is negated to the least possible integer.
And so this is network-centric warfare that Andrew is talking about. So communication to your device, and the device sending data, and multiple devices sharing the data. There has been some evidence that in high seas, some of the communications were jammed for 33 seconds in the last few months. So for such incidents, I would say that not quite foolproof, but a reasonably strong subsystem would be AI-based. Once that happens, the asset should know something, either to achieve the target, or actually it can calculate the probability whether it can achieve the target without communications. If not, just go back to the home base.
Yeah.
So the AI system drives it back.
That's a good point. Right, yo. Now, shifting gears, I want to talk about, so we were basically talked about the Horus system, but I want to also touch upon the Apophis IFV that Rob mentioned a couple of minutes ago. So if you can tell us more about that and sensors attached to them, and how does that integrate into your game plan, and will it integrate with Horus as well?
So the Apophis IFV, or infantry fighting vehicle, is meant to be a vehicle that, as Andrew said, is part of an infantry or combat unit team. What we don't want is to see the existing paradigm of a vehicle that is simply a battlefield taxi or a tool. We actually want it to be an active, intelligent member of the team that can contribute. And also, going back to something that Andrew said before, potentially seeing less soldiers put in harm's way. Conflict is enduring. Conflict is part of our DNA. It's not going to go away as much as we'd like it to. The less people we can put in harm's way, the better. So that's our concept, and we will likely achieve it through using our neural network and combining it with the technology of other partners, specialists in armor production, specialists in electric vehicle and power plant production, and weapons production.
Right.
In terms of the sensors that we put on it, again, we would likely partner with the with industry's sensor offerings, knowing that they will continue to evolve. So right now, in 2021, it's hard to say that, by the time we're ready to make Apophis, what sensors are we going to put on it?
Yep.
But I think it would be certainly safe to say, and I'll certainly hand over to Andrew and Imad to discuss this further, but it would be a combination of visual, auditory, electronic warfare, electromagnetic spectrum, and potentially others. But it's also important to say that because we are client focused, we're not going to say what those sensors need to be. Our clients will tell us what they want.
What they want for a specific.
We will do our best to make it work.
So the biggest selling point is this is where we bring all our mature technologies with our partners, provide a pure electric vehicle platform with long range. Before, if you're telling people, you're in building an electric tank only 5-6 years ago, they'll say you're out of your brain. But now the batteries are mature enough and they are proven now. They last a very long time. These vehicles that are used in today's life cycle, they'll probably be used for 20, 30 years, or they get life extension programs for 40 years. And batteries are perfect for that. So significantly reduces, you got to think wheel to well or from start to end point. You reduce the load on infrastructure. So if you're using diesel generators, vehicles have to have downtime regardless for maintenance, track slip or something like that. They can charge up pretty quickly. You don't have to carry as much fuel. You can use only for the same output of a vehicle, similar spec. It's around about a third of the fuel use for the same capability. And horsepower, with Teslas, the weight of a Tesla motor is about 30 kilograms itself, but it produces anywhere between 400 and 700 horsepower. I'm probably doing exaggeration, but so it's ridiculous amount of horsepower for a ridiculous amount of low weight. And batteries improve over time. So should the batteries, after it's 25 years in service, and it's the range reduction's a bit, how you're doing, we've lost about 10%, you upgrade to a far superior battery pack. Because this will continue, the batteries will continually develop. Even though the innovation curve is slowly going down, eventually, we'll definitely get far superior, and then fuel won't be able to catch up, to be honest, because of inefficiency.
So Elon has been talking about making these are just a 3D printed model of the 4680 batteries. And this is a couple of years. I think the battery day which Tesla introduced was one of the best in a long shot, because they're really changing the fundamentals of how these batteries work and how much power you can draw out of them. And that is something which is phenomenal. And I believe that eventually Tesla will either open it out to the world, or they'll partner with other companies and bring those battery technologies to the world as well. And again, that will again reduce the carbon footprint of our defense vehicles as well. It's a win-win all around. Yeah.
We have to, the fact of the matter is, and I understand that people in the environmental sustainability community are a bit wary about supporting defence, but it is a priority for the organisation. For everyone. We've got to think of the system as a whole, regardless.
Yeah.
So someone has to do it, and we prefer it to be us.
Fair enough. That's a great sentiment, I must say. Commendable, to be honest. I just want to touch upon the other part of your business, which is the UGVs, the unmanned ground vehicles. So are they going to be macrobots or microbots? Are they going to be tiny, bee-sized particles which go somewhere, become a crawler and be listening and remote sensing devices? Or are they going to be personal transport devices? I know this is very early in the roadmap, but I just want to touch upon that, just to know about that.
Yeah, Rob will expand more on this, but I'll just give a general overview. So we want to build off-the-shelf products that are modified for the end user. So that could be we won't talk about too much, give away any business ideas, but say a logistics vehicle, for example. We're building that, and then we can modify it to whatever use case they need with the limitations of that particular platform. But there's also bespoke solutions, and that's what we're designed for. Is yes, we've got these off the shelf, but if you want us, because of the flexibility of Horus, that's what we can do. So Robert will expand into that.
Yes, please.
So I think we're not going to see battle robots soon. We're not going to see Terminators, cutting their arms open. We're not going to see Optimus Prime swinging a sword on the battlefield for a whole bunch of reasons, practical reasons, ethical reasons. I don't think any government wants that. I don't think any society wants that. Down the track, could neural networks support machines like that? They probably could, but we're not in that game. What we are, as Andrew said, it is about being client focused. It's about producing products that have commercial viability and that can be off the shelf, but can be modified or even just made bespoke, depending on what the requirements are and what the use cases are. Ultimately, we would like devices that have the potential to be fully autonomous, but realistically, we need to enable human-machine pairing, particularly when we start talking defense and particularly when we start talking about anything with a weapon. No one wants machines making lethal decisions. None of us want that. Arguably, a neural network, it doesn't get tired, it doesn't get angry. Feasibly, maybe in the future, it could actually make better decisions, more ethical decisions than us, but that's a really complex area.
Yeah, complex area.
Probably
Right now, it's still an inference engine.
It's still needs several hours of YouTube channel to explore that. But what we do want to do is produce these, small unmanned ground vehicles, maybe even smaller, little microbots or whatever you might want to call them, that can do what our clients need them to do. Now, we can imagine some use cases. For example, we can imagine like a little UGV that carries pallets of equipment. That might be what defense wants. It might not be. They might want just completely speculative. They might want little robots that crawl along underground pipes that can help with terror situations. I don't know.
Visual, auditory, whatever.
So we're creating this really flexible product that I think has almost infinite possibilities.
Fair enough.
And we'll respond to what's required.
2 keywords. So you asked the question whether it would be big robot, micro robot, whatever. My answer is client responsive.
Fair enough. So they would drive what the robots would be, whether it's big or small, or if it's specified for one particular job, or they have a multiple of tasks that they can do.
The great thing about Horus, Horus has got the great thing about it is scalability. So like how you can choose your gender, you can choose its gender for it. So you can say, oh, it's a small EOD bot, or it's a large vehicle and it's understand its spatial awareness, and with its different, they're learning it's from its brothers and sisters, and the data it's collected, it goes, oh, tomorrow I can be a NeoD bot with lots of training and switching a few buttons. We can go, all right, it is when we civilianize our products and go into the civilian sector scaling, then we look at Hathor, which is separate to, again, that's another story, but for another day.
So it would be something like a software update. You know what Andrew is saying, that I'm a mini robot. So Horus activates the neural network, which is related to that mini robot. I'm a big guy. I'm an armored vehicle. So Horus activates the neural network, which is trained for armored vehicles.
Yes. No, this is very interesting, I must say. I do want to bring Jade in this at this time. I want to talk about what is the revenue model for the company, and how do you plan on achieving the goals?
Thanks, Nash. That's a good question. So we've got 3 streams as part of our revenue. We've got the first one, which is through product sales, where we sell our own or third-party products with our technology that's integrated into the product. 2, we have a licensed subscription model. So this could be, your basic, middle, or premium level subscription for the Horus AI package, which would be charged to defence and government organisations using our platforms, or other platforms where our software is being used within that product. And also number 3, a retrofitting of systems to legacy vehicles or platforms, where we can charge per vehicle or fleet of vehicles, as well as supporting services for that vehicle fleet.
Rightio. So in all, it does check multiple boxes there. I can see that you can start all the way from existing legacy vehicles. Although the top-down approach of changing everything to electric is the more desirable part, it may not, or rather, it may meet resistance from existing contractors and people who have already delivered stuff like that. So you starting from bottom up is also a good way to get there. And I just want to add one other thing. Now, in all of this, there must be some sort of impact. So what is the impact reporting of the company? How does that whole thing, tie up with your core models and your core values of the company?
Alrighty. So at Advent Atom, we would like to follow we support the global reporting initiatives, in particular G4, which is the sustainability reporting, and we support this from day one. So the GRI is a global independent standards organisation which supports organisations to understand and communicate their impacts on issues including sustainability and climate change. So it's not legally required in Australia yet for businesses to report on their sustainability impacts. It's a choice at this stage, but we believe that this sort of transparency is good for everyone involved, including shareholders, business partners, and most importantly, members of the public. So our mission is to help businesses in Australia and abroad improve their supply chains, enabling them to better serve the community and be sustainable in doing so. And we want our clients and the public to know exactly what we're doing behind closed doors.
Fair enough.
So at Advent Atom, we believe that sustainability reporting goes beyond compliance with recognised standards. We think it's important for businesses to take a more holistic view of their sustainability profile, which means looking beyond the financial impacts alone and taking into consideration social impacts as well. This is the corporate social responsibility perspective, which integrates environmental factors within a company's economic performance reports, ensuring they are presented as part of the company's overall strategy and goals. We will encourage our clients to report on their impacts with regards to sustainability, and which will also give a more accurate picture of how businesses are actually contributing to society as a whole.
Yeah, everybody should know that, isn't it? We should know what our businesses are doing to the environment that we live in. I mean, to see it, to give an overarching view of that. It's just one Earth, and we have to do everything to support and keep it sustainable for human beings to inhabit for eons. I would love to live a long time, yes, but I'd also like to leave Earth, which is great for my children, my children's children, and everybody down the line. That's amazing. Really, really nice talking to all of you. Before we wrap up, I mean, we could touched upon multiple things, right from philosophical impact of AI, and if we're going to see robot overlords, all the way down to Advent Atom's AI models and networking. Now, before we wrap up, I would like to know what will be the very first step that Advent Atom will take right now.
So the first is our product and product development and prototyping, as well as recruitment. But there is a core aspect in all of this, and in our core product, which is Horus, and Dr. Imad can quickly expand on that.
So the major activity that we need to do is collection of data. Collection of data since our first product, the first few products that we plan to design are military related. So we need to embark on a journey of collecting the data of the natural terrains, different environments, deserts, icy areas, as well as the natural terrain in Australia and elsewhere if possible. And then so some of the data can also be simulated. And so data collection is the first and continuous activity that we need to keep doing as a company. In fact, Tesla's success is largely on the basis of the amount of data that they have collected.
Absolutely. I was just going to add that point as well, because Tesla has multiple cars on the road with infinite amount of data, which they feed to their models and then they train their models. Where would the data come from for Advent Atom at this time?
So we do plan to partner with our clients in order to collect the data with a large number of vehicles as possible.
Brilliant. I wish you guys massive success. I mean, we would love to see an Aussie company win. That's one. Second thing, reduce the carbon footprint from top down and bottom up, and in the rephrase that. And in the process of doing that, you also remove our soldiers from harm's way. It is win-win in multiple fronts. And it's always heartening to talk to AI specialists to know that we're not going to be completely overrun by AI. We don't have to fear them. It is still our friend. And it's also going to make us into better individuals. And when we think about it, there is a little bit of AI all around us. The mobile phones that we use have a small bit of AI in them. Our houses have started getting AI. This all right from smart meters all the way to smart watches. There's a little bit of AI in them, and we don't recognize that. We always think of AI as Skynet, which is not the case. So every single one of this has made us better as human beings as well. So this is going to be the next step in that front, and it is also still going to make human beings better individuals in the future as well. I'm really intrigued and interested in this front. I wish you guys all the very best.